A heretic to some, a visionary to others, Akhenaten dared to defy Egypt's gods, reaching for the light of one sun in a land of many. Under the blazing Egyptian sun, in the golden age of the new kingdom, a single man rose to the throne who would attempt to reshape the very soul of his nation. His name was Amenhotep IV, but the world would remember him by another name, Akhenaten. In a realm where the gods were as numerous as the stars above the Nile, he dared to break the chain of tradition. He declared that there was but one God worthy of worship, a deity without form or face, a God not of statues or temples, but of light, the Aten, the sun disk whose rays stretched down to embrace the earth. Egypt, for centuries, had thrived under the watchful eyes of its many gods, Amun, Ra, Osiris, Isis, Hathor, and countless others. Every temple hummed with prayers, every festival burst with offerings, every corner of the land bore symbols of divine plurality. The Pharaoh was the bridge between mortals and these deities, the living Horus, the son of gods and king of men. Yet Akhenaten would take that bridge and lead it to a singular horizon, away from the grand pantheon and toward a single blazing sun. When he first took the throne, he was a young man of delicate features, a narrow face, elongated jaw, and a strangely graceful yet androgynous body that would later fuel speculation for centuries. Some saw in him the idealized image of a ruler favored by the gods. Others saw something unsettling, a figure too alien to fit the mold of Egypt's warrior kings. His early reign began as any other, but soon the signs of change appeared. The god Amun, whose priests held vast power and wealth, began to fade from royal rituals. The Aten began to rise. The Aten had existed in Egyptian religion long before Akhenaten. It was the visible disk of the sun, a manifestation of Ea, but never the sole focus of worship. To Akhenaten, however, Aten was not just another god among many. Aten was the only god. In this belief, Akhenaten found not only spiritual conviction, but also a political weapon. The priesthood of Amun had become almost a kingdom within a kingdom, rivaling the pharaoh's own authority. By elevating Aten above all and abolishing the worship of others, Akhenaten could break their power. This was not a small change. It was a revolution. Across the land, the names and images of Amun were chiseled out from temple walls, his statues smashed, his worship outlawed. Other gods, too, were stripped from public life. The great temples of Karnak and Luxor were left behind. In their place, Akhenaten envisioned a new city, Akhetaten, the horizon of Aten, built on virgin ground, untouched by the old gods, in the middle of the desert. There, open-air temples would stand beneath the direct light of the sun, for Aten had no need of shadowed halls or hidden shrines. The art of the time changed just as radically. For centuries, Egyptian art had followed strict rules. The pharaoh was depicted with a perfect, unchanging form, broad shoulders, narrow waist, idealized youth. But under Akhenaten, the royal family appeared with elongated skulls, wide hips, and tender gestures unseen in earlier depictions. In reliefs, he and his queen, Nefertiti, were shown cradling their children beneath the sun's rays, the Atens, hands offering the ankh of life to their lips. This was not the distant majesty of old kingship, but an intimate vision of family blessed directly by the god. Nefertiti herself was no mere consort in this vision. Her beauty and presence were legendary. but she was also a partner in Akhenaten's religious mission. Together they stood as the chosen of Aten, the only intermediaries between God and man. In this way, Akhenaten's monotheism was not a universal equality before a deity. It was centered on the divine authority of the royal couple. To worship Aten, one had to revere Akhenaten and Nefertiti. Life in Akhetaten was unlike anywhere else in Egypt. Without the massive temple complexes of the old gods, the people's religious life revolved around the daily movement of the sun. Priests served Aten in open courtyards, where light could touch every offering. Festivals were held beneath the sky, their processions bathed in sunlight. Yet for all the poetry of this new order, it was also deeply disruptive. The farmers, artisans, and scribes who had lived under the old ways now found themselves in a system where familiar gods were gone and ancient traditions had been cast aside. Beyond Egypt's borders, the empire still demanded attention. The Foreign Correspondence of Akhenaten's Reign tells a story of a king who seemed more concerned with his spiritual vision than with the politics and wars that sustained Egypt's power. Allies in the Levant called for military aid against encroaching enemies, but the pharaoh's response was slow or absent. While he built temples to Aten and expanded Akhetaten, Egypt's hold over distant territories weakened. In the heart of his reign, Akhenaten must have believed he was forging an eternal truth. The hymn to the Aten, a text attributed to him, speaks of the God as the source of all life, the bringer of the Nile's floods, the father and mother of all creatures. It is one of the most beautiful poetic works of the ancient world, filled with a sense of unity under the sun's embrace. Yet beauty alone could not secure the devotion of a nation steeped in polytheism for millennia. As the years passed, whispers of discontent grew louder. The priests of the old gods had lost their power, but not their memory. Ordinary Egyptians still muttered prayers to Amun, Isis, or Ptah in secret. The open skies of Aten's temples could not shelter the people from drought, plague, or political uncertainty. Some began to wonder if the sun alone could hear their cries. Then came the end, sudden and shrouded in mystery. Akhenaten's final years are poorly recorded, and what followed was a swift and decisive reversal. After his death, possibly succeeded, briefly by Smenkhkare, and perhaps even Nefertiti. Under another name, the boy king Tutankhaten came to the throne. Under the influence of advisors, he restored the old gods, changed his name to Tutankhamun, and abandoned Akhetaten. The city of the sun was left to the desert, its temples and palaces crumbling under the wind. The name of Akhenaten was cursed, his memory damned, his images destroyed, as if he had never ruled at all. And yet his shadow endures. For centuries after, Egypt returned to its polytheistic ways, but the idea of one God above all others, a God of universality and creation, would find echoes in faiths far beyond the Nile. Some see in Akhenaten a visionary ahead of his time, a prophet of monotheism centuries before the great Abrahamic religions. Others see him as a heretic king whose arrogance cost Egypt its stability and glory. The ruins of Akhetaten still lie in the desert, their outlines visible under the relentless sun. In its silence, one can almost hear the hymns once sung to Aten. See the royal family standing beneath the sun's rays, feel the heat of a dream that burned too bright to last. Akhenaten's life was a gamble against history, a moment when one man tried to rewrite the order of gods and men. His vision rose like the sun at dawn, dazzling and unchallenged, but by dusk it had already begun to fade into the horizon. Perhaps that is the true lesson of Akhenaten's reign, that even the brightest light casts the longest shadow, and in the dance between faith and power, no sun can hold the sky forever.